Telegram groups as well as Discords, and I started speaking to people on a regular basis. And it turns out that one of those people was Lafayette, the founder of Deus at the time. And one day he just told me, "Look, I'm looking to launch a protocol. I'm going to tell you more about it. But would you be interested in working with me on managing counterparty risk for the derivative platform that we're about to launch?" So I said, "Yeah, of course." And we started working together for a couple of months. This was my first experience in DeFi. And at the same time, I was already an early follower of Phantom. At the time, I'm not a developer, so I had a hard time assessing if it was really revolutionary tech or not. But what I saw is that when I saw SpookySwap and SpiritSwap launching the first dexes on Phantom, I said, okay, there is definitely an opportunity there, and there is definitely a need for a liquidity layer. And so it all started, I would say, from an opportunity, and then we stayed for the tech and the community, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've talked to so many people, and they have a similar story with a financial background. I have a little bit of a financial background, but it goes way back. It was it was a long time ago. But it's interesting how a lot of people rotate from that industry into DeFi. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just always cool to hear. So a little bit of history. I remember when Liquid Driver came out, that you guys, it seemed to be trying to do something for sushi. Like you were trying. Did you have some kind of agreement with them, or you were trying to create this for sushi? And I could be wrong, for sushi, and they weren't interested in working with you guys?
Yeah, exactly. So what we saw originally is that Sushi deployed on Phantom. It was one of the biggest decks at the time. And we said, look, there is an opportunity to build on top of them and to bring liquidity to them, because they didn't start their liquidity mining program. And if I'm not wrong, they still didn't really started it on Phantom as of today. So we said, okay, let's be first there. At the time, we didn't have any resources. We didn't have a team. I'm not a developer myself. So through some contacts, I met some people that would be able to basically deploy a proof of concept. And so the critical thing was that we wanted to launch as soon as possible. We could feel all the attention around Phantom, and we could see you guys launching and another bunch of protocols, a lot of Medium articles popping up about protocols planning on launching on Phantom. And so that's what we decided to do. Focus on launching a proof of concept first, and then start scaling the team from the revenue we make and start building towards a real vision, which is to be the liquidity layer on Phantom.
Yeah, so most people understand what you guys do, but for anyone that doesn't have a history on what Liquid Driver is, can you go into like what is it? What do you mean by creating a liquidity layer for that? Like what was it that your goal and your basic function as a protocol? What are you guys doing?
So what we're doing at the moment is that we're offering yields for our token to liquidity providers who stake on Liquid Driver. So right now we're supporting liquidity for 3 different dexes. We have obviously SpookySwap, SpiritSwap, and Beethoven X. And so what happens is that people deposit their liquidity on our platform, and they earn LQDR in return. What we do with those LP tokens is that we stake them on SpookySwap and other dexes. And then if you want to get those rewards, you need to lock LQDR, our token. You have the choice between locking it from 2 weeks up to 2 years. The longer you lock it for, the bigger the amount of XLQDR you receive per LQDR locked. And having XLQDR give you 2 rights. The first, it's access to our revenue sharing vault. And the second, and it's going to come soon, it's governance rights over our emissions, kind of like the curve model with the gauges, where XLQDR holders can vote to redirect emissions to specific pools. And from our holders' perspective, what's nice is that when you lock LQDR and receive XLQDR, you access the yields in the form of different blue chips tokens from Phantom. So it offers high yields, and it also diversifies automatically for you. At the moment, we're bringing a bit more than 25 million in liquidity in total. So we're doing a pretty good job at it. But the thing is that at the moment, we're not an open system, right? We're choosing with with which DEX we're working, with which pool to opens, depending on the yield. At the moment, the issue is that we're profit maxi. We're not really an open market where protocols can branch into us in order to basically get emissions to bootstrap their liquidity. And that's what we're trying to solve at the moment.
Yeah. So is this the master gauges project that you, or the product you have coming out? What you're referring to?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So that's something I noticed. I guess, I mean, it's how a lot of protocols, especially start, is that you guys have a lot of, a number of partnerships. But yeah, it's not, like you say, it's not an open market. It's not up for your users to necessarily decide. I understand you have governance. I was looking at earlier. But yeah, it's not where just anybody can use your product to bootstrap their liquidity, like you're saying. So that's cool. So before we go into that a little further, so just looking at your DApp here, you have your farm, and that is your basic functioning of what you're talking about. People take their liquidity pools from Spirit or Spooky or whatever. They deposit it here and earn an additional LQDR, essentially.
Exactly, but they don't earn Boo, for example. If you're going to provide liquidity for Boo FTM, for example, then you're going to receive those LP tokens, you're going to stake them on Liquid Driver and earn LQDR plus the trading fees from Spooky. And in the background, what we do is that we farm the Boo and we redistribute it through the revenue sharing vault for XLQDR holders.
Right. Now you have this product, and I don't think you're working with us on it, but I'd still be interested in what it is. You have this shadow farm product. How is that different? What is that compared to just your regular farm?
So first, it comes from an issue is that right now the system is performing well and we're providing high yield for XLQDR holders. But the issue, and it's the same issues that a lot of DEXs have at the moment, it's inflation, right? Over time, you want to reduce those emissions, but the problem is that if you reduce those emissions, some liquidity is going to go somewhere else where there are better yields opportunity, let's say. So we're looking for ways to over time reduce our emissions while still being able to provide competitive yields for our users. And so shadow farms is basically another form of auto compounding. If you want to, for example, compare it to Reaper, where instead of compounding your governance token that you acquire through yield farming back into the initial LP position, you compound it into the yield-bearing version of the token. So for Boo, it would be XBoo. So for example, you're going to deposit FTM Boo on Liquid Driver. And what we're going to do is that we're going to farm the Boo and compound it multiple times per day into XBoo. And then our multi-strategy is going to choose your partner pools that is driving the most yields. And if needed, it will dispatch the earned Boo into different partners pool. So the point is that it maximizes the yield and it allows you to build a long position on the governance token that you're farming instead of dumping it for more LP tokens.
Right, and that's something to reiterate for people that don't know. So when you have when you have an LP position and you're getting those Boo tokens, most vaults, they just dump them. They're dumping the token and putting it back into the LP. So there's constant sell pressure on the underlying token. And if you don't want that, you need these alternatives, and it looks like that's what you guys are providing, which is great.
Yes, exactly. So from the beginning, one of our core principles has been to work with our partners. And this is why instead of, for example, redistributing rewards in USDC, we've been redistributing it based on the tokens that we farm. Our goal is to align our interests with DEXs. So we're here to support them, not to just dump the token. And shadow farms kind of like keep the same logic, where we're giving an opportunity to access those high yields. And by the way, if you look right now, you have many pools where you could get higher yields by staking through XBoo and Partners Pool versus auto compounding directly into the LP position. So it's an alternative to have the highest yield and also to be long on the token instead of constantly dumping it, which is bad for the DEX long term.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. So you're referring to XLQDR. This is your yield bearing or revenue sharing token. can you? I know you have some. I've noticed these guys, and I don't know if people are very familiar with them. I guess it's Revest. You guys are doing something with them in this regard. Can you go into a little bit of your XLQDR? I know you mentioned it. You can lock it for a certain amount of time. Why would you then be interested in using the FNFT version? Just go into that a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good. So, okay, at core, we have XLQDR, but the issue is that once you locked and receive this receipt token, because it's literally just a receipt, you cannot do anything with XLQDR. You cannot use it as collateral because the underlying LQDR is untouchable. You cannot move it to another wallet. It's just there as a receipt token to see how your position evolves over time. So if you want to have a liquid position, you have two different options. The first one is those FNFTs that were built from Revest. And what it does is that it's going to lock the LQDR and receive the XLQDR within an NFT. And this NFT, you can send it from a wallet to another. You can receive all the usual rewards without fees. So that's pretty interesting. And also what's interesting is that you can list it on PaintSwap, for example. So I wouldn't say it's perfectly liquid because, well, we know like non-fungible tokens don't have the same access to like liquidity pools such as like ERC20 tokens. But still, you have a vibrant market where people can buy your FNFT, obviously at a discount, but you can still exit your position as long as you can match with a buyer. So this is pretty interesting. And the third option is those wrapped version of XLQDR. So we had different protocols that built on top of XLQDR, one of them being Growth DeFi. It's called CLQDR. And so what they do is that when you're going to swap the LQDR, they're going to lock it forever, and they're going to give you CLQDR, which is a receipt. CLQDR is tradable currently on Beethoven. And the thing is that you can receive the yields, they automatically compound. And you can also exit the position whenever you want. However, it doesn't go with the full functionalities of XLQDR because you don't have governance rights, which will be especially important once we move to the master gauge system that we'll talk about a bit later. And yeah, but it's basically you have a trade-off to do between choosing for liquidity or choosing for the utility of XLQDR that you cannot have through a wrap token.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you seen a lot of people move their XLQDR to CLQDR simply because I guess you didn't have this functionality yet? Did you see much movement moving from one to the other?
So the thing is, it's once you got XLQDR, you cannot do anything with it. So you cannot convert your XLQDR for CLQDR. However, since the launch of CLQDR, which we have seen a really strong adoption on wrap products. Like CLQDR currently owns about, I think, 16% of the XLQDR supply, which is already quite big, to be honest. So yeah, I guess, and especially when we're in the bear market, people will always be looking for liquidity versus something else. And given that at the moment, governance rights through XLQDR doesn't bring you any financial incentives, well, people would rather have a liquid position and have all the yields minus a small performance fee. But the dynamic might change once we introduce our upcoming model, the master gauge.
Yeah, no, that certainly makes sense. Now, how does, so that's interesting on the CLQDR. How does Lin Spirit and Lee, or however you'd pronounce that, Lee HND, which I'm guessing that's under finance, how do those fit into what you guys are doing?
So on one side, we're a liquidity layer. And on the other side, the way for us to build revenue without needing emissions is by acquiring governance tokens that can give us yields through different ways. So Lin Spirit and Lee HND kind of works the same way as CLQDR. So you give us your Spirit or your HND. In the background, we lock it. And we give you a derivative that represents the locked portion that you gave to us. And in return, we give you all the yields that we collect from the underlying lock token. It works exactly the same way as CLQDR, but instead we do not compound the rewards. We just directly give it through a staking pool. And so by doing this, Liquid Driver is acquiring governance influence over different protocols. And for InSpirit or LiHND, for example, what we're doing is that we're opening pools that are boosted, kind of like the same model as a Convex with Curve. People can deposit their stablecoin on our platform and earn at a boosted rate minus a performance fee that we take. This performance fee is then redistributed to XLQDR holders. If you want to access the yields generated through Liquid Driver, you need to lock or to get a derivative product built on top of XLQDR.
So if let's say, so you're obviously doing this thing with Spirit. If we had people in the Spooky community here that want to work more closely with Liquid Driver, is that something we would be able to set up with you guys? Is that something like how would our community push for you guys to do something similar with the Boo token, for example?
So this is something I would have loved to do a long time ago. I've been pushing with Erie for a long time for some kind of like locking feature or whatever. And I respect his decision. Erie always told me that he would rather have a model where you can still access the liquidity whenever you want, and I completely respect that. But for us, that means that it's really hard to have an offering on top of XBoo, because XBoo already offers everything that can be offered from SpookySwap. So for us at the moment, there is no direct way to be profitable while doing a wrapper for XBoo. However, right now, so we're working on the Spooky Shadow Farms, which should be released, I would say, in the next 2 weeks. And this is also the reason why I really wanted to have this AMA with you guys, is that, so as I said earlier, I don't want the team to decide with which decks we're going to work with or which pools we're going to open. And so we're going to have this new model, the Master Gauge system. Basically, what I want is that Spooky, Spirit, Beethoven, Money Markets, or any other dexes on Phantom, and a couple of weeks after cross-chain, would have access to a Master Gauge. Master Gauge can give you access to discounted incentives from Liquid Driver. So how it works is that we have epochs, which will last 2 weeks. And during the first round, protocols like SpookySwap can bribe XLQDR holders, or they can acquire XLQDR one way or another to redirect emission to the Master Gauge. Once that round is finished, they can then allocate the emissions that they receive based on the vote that they received. They can allocate it to whichever gauge they want. So let's say like SpookySwap strategy is to target new pools. They want to test if there is untapped demand for specific tokens, such as, I don't know, Avalanche, Matic, or whatever. They could use Liquid Driver to test those pools without opening pools that are incentivized with Boo. So you're kind of like subsidizing the yields for those pools with Liquid Driver, and you're accessing emissions at a discount, which is a capital efficient way to do it. And you also have full flexibility on how you will implement those emissions. So let's say for the first epoch, you decide to do it for, I don't know, Matic FTM. It doesn't generate enough fees. 2 weeks after, you can change your strategy and say, for example, okay, we want to increase the native liquidity with Boo FTM. And in the future, we'll go even one step ahead. And it's like, okay, SpookySwap wants to go on Arbitrum, for example. And the emissions that you will receive in your Master Gauge, you can move them cross-chain on any EVM compatible chain. So you can say, okay, you know what? Let's try to deploy SpookySwap on Arbitrum and subsidize the yields through Liquid Driver to see if we could get enough demand. So you have a product where you can branch into, and that gives you the flexibility to use those emissions however you see fit, depending on your strategy. And you can do that in a capital efficient way, because those emissions are generally trading well under $1 per dollar of emissions. And so right after this AMA, I mean, in the next 2 or 3 days, we aim to push a proposal on SpookySwap to do a proof of concept with us once we launch the Master Gauge, to test the product and see if it could be beneficial for you, which I'm sure it could be.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I know I've watched your product for since you guys launched a year ago, and I've always um, thought that maybe there was a way that Spooky could work closer, just because it didn't seem like like Liquid Driver and Spooky were quite working together like some of the other dexes. So that's I mean I think that would be a really cool way for us to work together more closely. Well, see if it works. I mean, if there's a proposal, it's up for the community to make that decision. Um, where do you so you're saying this could work cross chain as well. Now, is Liquid Driver looking to do other things cross chain, or is it just this master gauge product?
For now, to be honest, it's going to take us a long time to like build our entire product cross chain. So I would say it's going to be our focus for the next 2-3 months. But in general, the main strategy is to move cross chain, to open those shadow farms for multiple dexes or money markets where the model fits with the strategy. This will generate more yields that don't require emissions from our side. And on top of that, opening this incentive marketplace cross-chain so that any protocols on any VM compatible can tap into to bootstrap their liquidity. And I think before the end of year, it will be enough. We currently have a team of 3 Solidity developers. So I guess they will be pretty busy until the end of the year, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I hate to, well, I shouldn't say I hate. I love to ask the question, but I learn not to ask developers this question. But since you said you're not a developer, I can ask you this question. So when would master gauges be ready? When?
I'm gonna tell you a date, and then I'm gonna receive a message from one of our devs telling me you're crazy, man.
We're not holding you to that. Yeah.
So we're gonna do it in 2 steps. The first will be the proof of concept on Phantom, and I would say that the contracts are ready. We were working on user experience where even like protocols like SpookySwap have a dashboard where they have full control and they have all the data available to make well-informed decisions regarding their strategy. And on Phantom, I'd say it won't be too long until we release. I would say maybe 3 weeks. At the moment, we're testing the bribing marketplace. We already have all the UIs ready and all the contracts have been reviewed by the Phantom Foundation already. So we have the green light on that side. So I would say, let's say 3 weeks. And then cross-chain, I cannot possibly give a date because, well, for example, recently we just moved LQDR cross-chain. Now we're working on putting XLQDR cross-chain. And there might be some changes in the infrastructure that we're going to use. So I cannot give a specific date because, well, you know, when you go cross-chain, you also have to have a security first kind of approach. So we're taking our time on that side.
Yeah. So you're saying LQDR and XLQDR have gone cross. What chain? One in particular that you have it on, or?
I mean, we've been eyeing Optimism, and I guess it's also because we've seen a lot of Phantom native projects moving on Optimism, but ultimately it doesn't matter where we're going. And that's the beauty of our upcoming model, because let's say we deploy on every chain and for whatever reason, it would have 0 demand on Optimism and Arbitrum. And it's not an issue because we can have demand from, I don't know, Ethereum and Matic and Phantom. So, you know, we won't be dependent on a specific chain as soon as we launch the product cross-chain. But the first chain that we're targeting at the moment is Optimism, due to the activity that is there at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's really important. You know, people ask, you know, when are you going cross chain? What chains? And I think you have to be careful, especially in this market, on trying to pick a winner. I mean, let's say you go all out for one particular chain like Optimism. You put a lot of commitment into that, and it just doesn't work. And so then it's just been kind of you know, a lot of effort, and maybe you shot your opportunity, you know. And so if there's a model to where, hey, we're kind of chain agnostic, we can be almost anywhere. I think that's the better approach if that's something that you're capable of doing, for sure.
Definitely. And if I may add something, even for DEXs specifically, I would say it's very, very hard to move cross-chain because you're going to end up on a new chain where you will have native DEXs that will launch and that will have the firepower that any newly launched DEXs have. You have at the beginning, you have the hype, the speculation, and you have a lot of emissions in the first week because you want to bootstrap your liquidity. And what I've seen so far when DEXs have tried to go cross-chain is that they often lose the battle a couple of weeks after launching, because you have all those other DEXs that are focusing only on one chain that has all their emissions that are redirecting to the pools on this chain. And for me, that's a big issue. And that's also something that where Liquid Driver could really help protocols. So as I said earlier, at the beginning, you just have to deploy the contracts, and Liquid Driver can incentivize the liquidity for you. You can test the market, and it allows you to have a more, I would say, agile and flexible way of deploying on another chain without putting all your eggs in the same basket,
No, that's a great point. Yeah, great point. Awesome. Well, so I'm going to go into community questions here in a minute. Are there other things on your roadmap? I mean, this is obviously a big roadmap going cross-chain. Master gauges, which you've been working on. Is there something else? Is there something else you guys are working on that you're able to mention?
We're always looking for to acquire governance influence over specific protocols, but at the moment I couldn't name one specifically. But our core business model is into acquiring a variety of locked tokens. So this is something we're on the lookout for. But despite that, I would say, so our priority right now is deploying shadow farms for SpookySwap and Beethoven, and deploying the master gauge on Phantom, then cross-chain. Once that's done, we will be able to think about the long-term future, let's say.
From a community aspect, how should Boo holders look ahead to how we can support working with you guys more?
It's been basically it's funny because once a month I talk with Erie, and it's always okay. We want to work together, but what exactly can we do together? And I think the first thing is shadow farms are going to be pretty cool for SpookySwap, because as I said, it's a way to offer your user base higher yields without requiring to compound yourself, and it also accumulate the rewards instead of selling them. And I think if we move together with the master gauge system, well, it could be a good way to get our community closer, and also strategize together on, okay, how can SpookySwap reinforce its position as the leading DEX on Phantom, or depending on what you guys have in mind. I don't know if it's going cross-chain. I've seen on your Twitter that you're about to release a new feature. I'm really excited to see what it is, but whatever it is, whatever is your strategy, the main goal of Liquid Driver is to support DEXs like you. So it's the only way that Liquid Driver is going to be successful in the future. If we do not bring value to DEXs long term, we will just die. So personally, my approach with Erie and with the entire team is just, if you have any idea on how Liquid Driver could help out SpookySwap, just let me know. And I think with the master gauge that are coming up, it will be a great way to think together about how to reinforce your position and how could we support you guys in your future endeavor.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Well, let me look at so anybody, while I'm looking through these, if you have any questions that were not covered in what we've talked about, if you go to the AMA questions section, it's right above Spooky AMA LQDR. You can pop in your question in there. A lot of these questions are from a little over last week, because we've been trying to do this AMA for a while. And it's been kind of hard to get it done, mainly because of myself. I was a little sick last week, so first question here. AMA with Liquid Driver, I guess you chose Phantom to solve problems like cost, speed, reliability, right? So that's in reference to why you guys chose Phantom. But can you explain more about the benefits that Phantom brings to Liquid Driver and how this network is suitable for Liquid Driver performance? So maybe, I feel like this is a question that comes up almost every time, is like, why Phantom? Maybe just rehash that a little bit. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but anything in particular that especially if you didn't mention it earlier.
Yep, sounds good. But as I said at the beginning, it was an opportunity mainly, but the main advantage of Phantom is, and everyone must say the same thing, but it's its low fees. For example, when you look at the amount of transactions that we need to do on a day-to-day basis for our strategies, if we weren't developing this on Phantom, it would cost way more in terms of gas fees. And on Phantom, we end up with daily bills that are just a couple of cents, you know? Like if you look, for example, our current shadow farms, people are vesting every, I don't know, every 20 minutes sometimes because it is so cheap. It becomes profitable so fast to compound that it compounds, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40 times a day. I don't know. But it's crazy. And only on Phantom can you can see that. And the second thing, but it's not directly related to the tech, it's the community. Honestly, I've been experiencing a lot of different chains. And you know, a lot of people are saying, yeah, Phantom is retail oriented, and that is true. But that also means it has a lot of usage. Like the people from like the everyday life are using Phantom because it's cheap, the UX is great, and you have great protocols on it. And so this is a sticky community that supports this protocol, and that's also one of the biggest advantage that I see building on Phantom.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. When I go to conferences, I meet so many people, and it's surprising. You meet all these really smart people that are just, they're investing with their own personal money. We're not a VC heavy chain. I don't think anyone will ever claim that. And we have a ton. It's a bear market right now. Usage is down, but we've had a ton of usage, and there's hundreds of thousands, tons of actual real users that use the chain. And that's attractive, and it should be attractive to venture capital. What they would love to have, they would love to have our users, right? They would love to have fans.
Definitely,
yeah. Okay. So another question in regards to master gauges. So, what is your plan to ensure sufficient DEX liquidity, fulfill market orders, maintain adequate TVL values and liquid driver treasury to ensure profitable return for both you and your partners, considering the migration from V2 to V3? So this person obviously is following it. So,
wait, let me see the questions because there were a lot of points. The plan is kind of like following what we've been doing so far. So it's the difference is that right now, as I said, we're profit maxis. So we're going to work with DEXs that have enough demand to drive TVL. We're going to open pools that already have demands that are generating nice trading fees and also that have nice farming rewards so that we can redistribute it to XLQDR holders. And once we deploy the master gauge system, that completely changes. We're not going to look to optimize our emission distribution based on the revenue that we can make. It's going to be DEXs who are going to decide how to use those emissions. But the thing is that our interests are aligned. If DEXs are going to pay for emissions, they want to use those emissions so that they can drive fees. So it means increasing the TVL in pools where it's needed, where people are trading and people are kind of like thirsty for bigger TVL so they can have lower slippage and have a better pricing for their trades. And so I think in that sense, we open up a free market where the behavior of participants automatically optimize the distribution of emissions because they want to generate the most fees in the end. That's what a DEX is trying to do.
Okay, perfect. What's the biggest obstacle or limitation that Liquid Driver faces? They're referring, have you had obstacles when you migrate from V1 to V2 and then the obstacles going to V3?
Yeah, the biggest one is the bear market. So I guess a lot of people right now are just fed up with crypto, maybe because they lost a lot of money. And so that means that those people are not checking their positions. And so we've seen it when we did the migration with SpookySwap recently. If you look on Liquid Driver or inactive farms, you still have a lot of money there. So because it requires a manual migration, you're going to end up with a lot of funds that are just going to stay there, unproductive funds that are not going to move until I don't know when it will be empty, but it's been already 2-3 weeks and we still have 2 million, something like this, that is staked and that is not earning yields. So I would say this is one of the biggest issue. And the second, it's also In DeFi, you're talking to a financial expert, and you're also talking to maybe a younger person that doesn't even have basic economics knowledge. So, trying to address to various type of people so that everybody can smoothly migrate and understand what they're doing. So on the education side, basically, it's complicated. Overall, when you do a migration, it's kind of stressful. And I guess SpookySwap did it quite recently as well when you move to your farm v2 now. So I guess it's an issue that a lot of protocols are encountering. So it's having sticky TVL that will migrate and keep using your product. This is the most stressful part, I will say.
Yeah, totally fair. Okay, another question. How much would we expect the Boo rewards will drop for XLQDR holders after the deployment?
So I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding here. It's that for SpookySwap, until we move to the master gauge, we won't cut our Spooky or Beats pool. We're gonna separately open those shadow farm strategies, and so users will have the choice, depending, I guess, where the highest yield will be, between staking in the shadow farm and staking to earn LQDR. But both strategies will work concurrently. We will not stop the spooky farms until we migrate, because that would make the revenue drop too much. So I would say it's gonna increase basically, because you will earn the same Boo rewards from our regular strategies, and on top of that, you will receive the 4.5% performance fee coming from the shadow farms in the form of Boo.
Okay, next question. You kind of covered it. It's in regards to the FNFTs by Revest. What role did they play in Liquid Driver ecosystem? Is there anything in regards to those NFTs that you didn't mention earlier? Maybe. And this has to do with your XLQDR. You can lock them as FNFTs. Is there anything you didn't mention maybe from earlier about those?
One thing I could add is, because I've seen quite a few people asking for it, is if one day people could use their FNFT to borrow some money. So use those FNFTs as collateral. And the first step before doing this is you need to have a liquid market, because if we need to liquidate your collateral, then we need to find a buyer and fast, which is not the case at the moment. Like if you see on PaintSwap, you see a bit of activity, but it's mostly for small FNFTs. So at the moment, it's definitely not possible, and Liquid Driver is not looking to bring liquidity to the FNFT marketplace. So this is not something that we'll do soon. This is the only thing I would say I did miss.
Yeah, that's difficult. I talked to some protocols, gosh, maybe even in February, that were talking about the collateralization of NFTs. And I mean, that is so hard. I mean, how do you put the value on? I mean, when people think of NFTs, they think of rather than a financial instrument, they think of like a JPEG, right?
Yeah.
What you guys are doing is certainly different, but that's just not. That's something that's still it's coming. Being able to collateralize.
I think it will be tough to be honest. As long as you do not have a lot of volume for your NFT based product, there is no way that we use it as collateral. There is just too much risk to acquire bad debt, and I think no protocols right now would try to do this. But we never know. Maybe if you would need to tokenize your NFT first, and then if there is enough liquidity for your tokenized version, then maybe you could use it with a very, very low loan to value ratio.
Okay, Magic Cat question: is there a way for Liquid Driver to integrate Magic Cat's NFTs for single stake XBOO? Magic Cat's, the number one NFT on Phantom's been for a while. What do you think?
So we did our math. Like I was super excited about doing this, to be honest. And then I sent a message to Erie. It was I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Oh man, you didn't want protocols like us to acquire Magic Cats, right?" And I guess from the beginning, the vision of the Magic Cats was to benefit your community. It's more retail oriented. We've run the math to see if we could be profitable and start acquiring Magic Cats to offer the boosted rates. Especially, it would have fit perfectly with our shadow farms, because we would have been able to boost those rewards that we stake in your partners' farms. So we're super excited about doing this, but we run the math, and because the experience scales linearly for the Magic Cats, there is no way for us to be profitable long term. We would lose a lot of money by doing this. So unfortunately, it's not possible.
You know, you can always buy some for fun. You know.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're cool. Actually, I own one.
Nice. Okay, so any synergies with Reaper on Boo XBoo, at least regarding XBoo staking optimization, minimizing partner pool dilution?
So not at all. In that sense, we're kind of competing on that side. Even if I'm in constant contact with the Reaper team. I love those guys. They're building great products. But no, definitely no synergies, because if we would use them, they would take the performance fee. We wouldn't take it. And the point is to also drive more revenue for XLQDR holders. So we have our custom solution for this.
Yeah, it's totally competing with them, even though those guys are great. So, what's the inflation rate of the protocol? I'm guessing this is in regards to LQDR, and is that available in your docs?
Available in our docs. I would need to check because I do not manage it, and I think we might have to update it. But at the moment, I did the calculation about a week ago, and it's about 36% annually. And then you have to consider that most of it is being locked. At the moment, for example, we have, last time I checked, it was about 63% of our supply lock. Maybe now it's 60%, I don't know. But generally, on a regular day, at least half of the LQDR emitted are locked.
Okay, it's a lot. Okay, Home, you took this person's question. Okay, next question. Any advice on how the Phantom ecosystem and Phantom can continue growing and reach that breakthrough level of adoption similar to ETH BNB? This is more of just a general question, I guess, on how you think as a power user, developer of sorts on Phantom, what do you think the Phantom ecosystem needs to do to become to get that general adoption that like Ethereum has?
So to be completely honest, I think there is some work to be done by the foundation. I've seen that they've onboarded quite a few VCs, so they're going in the right direction. But let's be honest here, we're in a very competitive industry. You can check all those other chains, whether it is Aurora, Avalanche, Optimism, Arbitrum, who's coming up with their own token. They all have big incentives. And if there is one thing that we can all agree on in DeFi and in blockchain in general, is that it's full of mercenary capital. People are just looking for the highest yield. They're looking for speculation. They're looking for price appreciation. And if you do not give that to the community and to builders, then people are going to go somewhere else. And what we've seen with the adoption of Phantom for like the past year before this bear market, well, we've clearly seen that when they launched the incentive program, well, the adoption just skyrocketed. The TVL skyrocketed. The volume skyrocketed. You just can see the daily volume of SpookySwap on DeFi Llama a couple of months back. It was crazy. You had more than 1.5 billion TVL. Okay, there was the bear market. But what I mean by this is people will go where the incentives are. And that goes for the community and that goes for the builders as well. So I'm really looking forward to see the Gitcoin grant, which I think will help a lot driving a lot of human resources back to building on Phantom. And on the tech side, I mean, Phantom has a lot of advantages. Let's be honest here. It's EVM compatible, it's fast, it's scalable. And from what I've gathered so far, all the team that I've built on Phantom love the tech. So for me, it's about bringing more money in through VCs, through incentive program, and then the builders will come and the value will come. But unfortunately, it all starts with incentives.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say Phantom really did a good thing last. I mean, long term, who knows? But it certainly did help the ecosystem when they launched their grant program last September, I think it was, and it really set itself as a retail chain. I mean, that really brought all kinds of adoption by users onto the chain into using all these great products, like SpookySwap, like Liquid Driver, like Beethoven, all these guys, great products, right? And
Yeah.
it definitely built a large user base, and there's going to be loyalty from that user base just because they're familiar with it. It worked really well. So it's just the next step. Like how do you take that next step that's more of a longer term? Maybe that grant program really wasn't something that could continue for years and years. But
Yeah,
what's the
I
next
guess
step,
I guess it was also the way it was implemented. Like I followed their logic. They wanted to do a decentralized incentive program where basically the team do not choose who should receive the rewards and who should not. And also they realized after that having the TVL as a metric is good for DeFi, but they also wanted other kind of dApps, where the main metric is not essentially TVL. So I completely understand the logic. Well, I just wanted to answer the question on what does Phantom need. It's one other thing that is important is that people say, yeah, for example, Phantom is dead. Look at the TVL chart, look at the volume chart. Yeah, but look at Matic before. It was exactly the same. At some point, everyone said Matic is dead. You just need one new flagship product. You just need one new feature from one new product from SpookySwap. You just need builders to build some amazing stuff so that the TVL will come back. So it's about cycles as well. And I wouldn't say Phantom is dead or move somewhere else or everyone is moving cross chain. Everyone is moving cross chain because we think that the barriers between chains will be removed in the future, and so it allows you to tap into a bigger market. But Phantom definitely has a lot of potential. The tech is there. The Gitcoin program is coming, and you don't know what tomorrow will be. I'm pretty sure you currently have builders doing some amazing stuff on Phantom, and you will hear a lot more about Phantom in the future. But right now we're just all suffering, and whether you're on Phantom or somewhere else, it's pretty much the same. Maybe it's a bit harder on Phantom than on ETH, for example, obviously. But overall, we just got to get through this bear market together, and builders need to keep building.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I mean, there's no magic bullet. I mean, if you're a holder of a token or something right now, and you're just like, man, if my project would just do this, it would improve things. It's just how the market is right now. It's there's no stick save you're going to have or anything like that. We're all right now. The best thing projects can do is build and put themselves in a great position for the next cycle. I think that's the best they can really do, and I think all the great projects are doing that. So, okay. Yep. So is there anything we did not cover that you want to mention? I'm done here with the community questions. So, anything else we didn't cover?
On my side, I think we covered pretty much everything. I just want to reiterate that I'm really looking forward to work closely with the community and the team as well to see what we could do together in the future. We will have a proposal ready very soon, and I hope it's the beginning of a new working relationship between Liquid Driver and SpookySwap. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me here today. It was really a pleasure to interact with you and being able to give more information to your community.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you giving your time. We're working with my schedule. And sharing a Liquid Driver with our community. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to any proposal you make. And yeah, we need to work more together. So anything we can do as a community to facilitate that, I know I'd love to help that. So yeah, that's great. That's everything for me. Really appreciate everyone here and listening, asking your questions, and I hope it was informative. And yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Owen. Take care, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.